A tourist threw a stone at a guard, convinced his money gave him the right to do anything. But the guard's response shocked everyone, turning a day of mockery into a lesson in honor and humanity. What happened next? London awoke in its usual grandeur. A mist, like a protective veil, blurred the sharp outlines of Buckingham Palace, while a swarm of tourists buzzed outside the gates like a hive. Amid this sea of humanity stood a single figure, Guard William, as immovable as a granite statue. His towering bearskin hat added an air of majesty to his stance, and his crimson uniform symbolized a tradition that had endured for centuries. The crowd formed a tight circle around William, clicking cameras and shouting questions they didn't really expect answers to. Their voices blended into a background hum, a mix of admiration, irritation, and raw curiosity. To William, it was just another day on duty, where patience was tested as much as endurance. From the crowd emerged a man wearing a loud, garish shirt reminiscent of cheap motel wallpaper. His face radiated smugness, and he clutched a massive camera, the kind seemingly fit for a Hollywood blockbuster. "Hey mate, give us a smile!" he shouted, addressing William as if they were old friends. "Come on, we paid for this. Let's see some action." If sarcasm had a physical form, it would have been embodied in William's silent expression. His eyes stared straight ahead, ignoring the brash tourist and his ridiculous shirt. His entire being seemed to say, "I am here to represent dignity and honor, not to be part of your cheap spectacle." "What's the deal, mate? Can't do anything? At least blink or something. Or have you Brits completely forgotten how to have fun?" The man continued, stepping closer. The crowd chuckled nervously. Someone whispered, "Uh-oh, he's gonna get in trouble." But most stood poised with their phones, ready to capture a viral moment. To them, the guard wasn't a person, but a moving piece of scenery. "Seriously, folks," the man turned to the crowd, playing to his audience. "Aren't these guards just fancy-dress clowns?" And here you feel it, don't you? That faint tickle of indignation. How dare he? These aren't just clowns. They're a national symbol, a tradition admired worldwide. You're right to feel that way. And so did William. He stood there not to entertain, but to honor a tradition the majority of the crowd couldn't even begin to grasp. But explaining this to someone who thought money entitled them to mockery would be pointless. The man persisted, stepping closer, nearly crossing the white line that separated the tourist from royal dignity. William stood firm, unflinching. No hint of irritation, no desire to respond, just silence and resolve. The tension in the crowd began to shift. Murmurs spread. A woman in a yellow coat shot the man a sharp look. "He's a symbol of Britain. Have some respect," she said. But respect wasn't part of the man's vocabulary. He had paid for his trip to London, and to him, that meant he deserved the show. For a brief moment, the crowd fell silent. The laughter, the camera clicks, the muffled voices, all vanished, as if someone had muted the scene. The loudest presence remained the man in his gaudy shirt, with patterns resembling a botched tropical cocktail. His smug grin was so wide it could have blinded someone. "What's wrong, soldier boy? Can't even flinch?" he sneered, stepping half a foot forward. His shoe nearly touched the line that separated commoners from royal decorum. "Can't even blink? Or is showing emotion banned around here?" Ah, if only William's gaze could become a sword, this man would have been vanquished already. But no, the guard remained as still as a statue, embodying the art of not reacting to provocation, an art beyond the comprehension of ordinary mortals. The man smirked, clearly misinterpreting William's silence as weakness. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small pebble. Where he had even found it was anyone's guess, and with a squint, tossed it toward William's polished boot. The pebble grazed the gleaming leather before falling to the ground. The crowd gasped in unison. This wasn't just an act of rudeness, it was a challenge to everything the Royal Guard represented: discipline, tradition, even the very idea of honor. Someone whispered, "Oh, he's done for now." Others activated their cameras, eager to capture what promised to be an internet-worthy moment. Because, of course, nothing matters more these days than creating content. The man turned to the crowd with a triumphant smirk, as if expecting applause. "Did you see that? I made him move," he declared, puffing out his chest. "Maybe now he'll actually do something." And then it happened. William, who had been motionless until that point, slowly raised his head. His piercing gaze was so intense it could have shattered the man's confidence into 1,000 pieces. The crowd held its breath. Finally, William spoke, his voice crisp and commanding, cutting through the air like a blade. "Sir, step back behind the line, immediately." The moment was pure cinematic gold. Even the wind seemed to stop. The man who just moments ago had been the self-proclaimed king of the scene suddenly shrank. He glanced at the crowd, but their support had evaporated. The whispers had turned into condemnation. "This is disgraceful," a woman called out. "How can you act like this?" "They represent the country, and he's throwing stones? Shameful," added another voice. The man's face flushed, not with shame, but with the desperate need to salvage his ego. He muttered something about it being just a joke, but it was too late. The crowd was no longer on his side. He now looked like a child caught stealing candy. And William? He stood tall. His voice had rung out only once, but it was enough to restore order. That was the magic of the Royal Guard. There was no need to shout, grab, or argue. A single word could draw a clear line between foolishness and dignity. The man fell silent, realizing with growing horror that the pebble still lay at William's boot. The crowd watched, tense, wondering. Would he pick it up, or leave it as a marker of his own foolishness? You want to know too, don't you? Well, stay tuned. The best part is yet to come. The crowd held its breath. The tourist, still clad in his tasteless shirt, fumbled for words, glancing nervously between the unyielding guard and the judgmental faces surrounding him. "I was just joking. Come on. Why is everyone so serious?" he mumbled, but his bravado faded with each passing second. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, and many faces now bore the unmistakable expression. "Really? That's the best you've got?" Then something happened that silenced even the harshest critics. A child's cry pierced the tense air like a crack splitting through ice. Everyone turned toward the sound. A small boy in a wheelchair had strayed too close to the horse of another guard. The massive animal pawed the ground nervously, flaring its nostrils, and the child, frightened by its looming presence, burst into tears. His mother, visibly shaken, tried to comfort him, but was clearly struggling to contain her own panic. The crowd's murmurs swelled, phones now trained on the unfolding drama instead of the tourist. What happened next stunned everyone. Guard William, until now as still as a statue, stepped forward. Yes, you heard that right. He broke protocol without a moment's hesitation. His posture remained impeccable, each step radiating dignity. The crowd gasped, recognizing the gravity of the moment. This wasn't just a breach of tradition, it was history in the making. William approached the boy, his face a stoic mask, but his movements deliberate and full of purpose. He leaned slightly toward the child, lowering his head just enough to convey reassurance. "Easy now, little one," he said softly, his voice unexpectedly warm. The crowd froze. Even the tourist with the garish shirt seemed shaken, his camera hand trembling slightly. For once, filming didn't seem so appealing. Someone in the crowd murmured, "Now that's a real hero." And the tourist? His smugness evaporated faster than London fog under the midday sun. He looked as if he wanted to disappear into the cobblestones. As William comforted the child, the horse, almost mirroring its handler's calm, ceased its anxious fidgeting and stood still. The boy's mother, visibly moved, murmured tearful thanks as she stroked her son's hair. This simple act of kindness transformed the atmosphere. The sarcastic chuckles and crowd's irritation melted away. People began clapping, their applause spontaneous and heartfelt. This wasn't just an act of compassion. It was a reminder that even under rigid protocols, humanity could shine through. As for the tourist, he looked utterly pathetic now. The crowd began inching away from him, leaving him isolated in a ring of silent disapproval. Someone called out, "Take a good look. That's what professionalism and respect look like. And you, what do you have?" You feel it, don't you? That twinge of justice, the satisfaction of seeing a true hero rise and a villain's pettiness crumble. William straightened, returned to his post, and resumed his stance as if nothing had happened. Yet everyone watching knew he'd just demonstrated why traditions endure. Applause erupted, breaking the heavy silence like thunder at the end of a powerful performance. But this wasn't a theater stage. This was real life. People clapped for the guard who, with one simple act, reminded everyone what it meant to be human, even while upholding the highest standards of duty. "That's how it's done!" someone in the crowd shouted, igniting a wave of cheers and shouts of admiration. The tourist, still standing awkwardly in his ridiculous shirt, now seemed unsure of what to do. Moments ago, he had been the self-proclaimed star of his own performance. Now, he was the unwelcome antagonist, abandoned even by the crowd he'd once sought to entertain. He thought paying for a trip to London gave him the right to mock its traditions. How naive, you'd think, and you wouldn't be alone. Everyone saw it. An officer from the security detail approached the tourist, his expression a mask of weary professionalism. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the area," he said with a politeness that was almost too admirable for the situation. "Come on, it was just a joke," the tourist stammered, his voice losing its former arrogance. But the damage was done. The crowd rumbled in approval at the officer's request, and someone even shouted, "Maybe next time you'll think before you act." Videos of the incident quickly spread across social media. Comments poured in. "Tourists like this have no respect, and the guards are symbols of the nation, not props for entertainment." Yet just as many praised William's act of kindness. Now that's what it means to wear that uniform. As the crowd slowly dispersed, the atmosphere felt lighter, yet charged with admiration. William, seemingly oblivious to the stir he'd caused, returned to his post. His steps were as measured and precise as ever, his face a study in calm focus. Before resuming his stance, he adjusted his bearskin hat. And then, something remarkable happened. A fleeting, almost imperceptible moment. He turned his head ever so slightly toward the boy in the wheelchair. It lasted only a second, but it spoke volumes. A silent acknowledgement, a wordless reassurance. The crowd gasped again. Even those who'd come for a simple photo op felt the weight of what they'd witnessed. This wasn't just a reminder of why traditions mattered. It was a lesson in humility, honor, and compassion. The tourist with the pebble? Now he seemed like a relic of a less respectful era, his actions overshadowed by the timeless dignity of the guard. The day ended as it began, with Guard William standing tall and proud, embodying the honor of his post. Yet those who witnessed his actions left with something more, a renewed respect for the values that connect us across time and tradition.